Welcome to the soul of the EveryMan on the Artist First Radio Network. All past broadcasts are podcasts. Find them at artistfirst.com. We welcome your questions and comments. Please use DJ at artistfirst.com. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here they are, Michael and Margaret Lyons.
And thank you very much, EveryMan, and I am Michael Lyons.
And I'm Margaret.
And welcome to all of our vast audience. Our audience is vast, right? Well, all of you out there, you're in for a treat, because tonight we're going to talk about the most important moment of your life. Yeah, of your exact life, the most important moment.
The moment that you can't avoid, even though you may try.
As ominous as that sounds, but it's also true. And the other thing that's good to note about that particular moment is it's always yours. You share it with no one else.
Actually, that's a very good point, because mindset when you're doing something, you're not aware of the fact that you chose to concentrate on that task, let's say, in that moment. You just, okay, I got to do this now. Oh, I got to do that now. And when you become aware of the fact that you actually choose, you have the power to choose, it creates space for you to function in your present now moment. It's fascinating.
And there's something else about that. But let's get, you know what, we're jumping past the moment. And we're going to go back to the moment and say, let's pull in, this is a quote from our favorite, Eckhart Tolle. So would you read the quote, please?
Sure. The most important part of your journey is the step that you're taking at this moment. And that's something to continuously realize and practice, because that's all there ever is. Okay.
And I want to just go back to what you said earlier about the moment that you realize that you're making a choice. Gives it space. You're absolutely right. It gives it space. It does something else. When you realize that you're making a choice to do or not to do anything at that particular moment, the moment that you're living in right now, it does something to it that's perhaps unnoticed, but if you think about it, it's very real. It makes the moment special. And then you say, but gosh, I mean, the next moment's special too, and I'm going to say, yes. Once you become aware that every moment is a choice, it makes every moment special and unique and yours. People are often putting off, their whatever their daily routine is until some special moment. Oh, we'll be on vacation. Oh, it'll be my birthday. Oh, it'll be our anniversary. And they kind of define, well, that's a special moment. That's my moment. That's my day, right? My birthday, my day, my day, my day. But the truth of the matter is, the truth of every moment is that every one of them belongs to one person and one person alone, you. And every one of them affords you the unique opportunity to choose, to create space, and to realize how special it is. If for nothing else, if for no other reason, that it's never going to occur again. And never, in this case, encompasses the whole entire history of the universe to this date, to this moment, and anything that happened before or after. It's never going to happen again.
Well, the creation of time is designed for your awareness to become acquainted with series moments. Maybe that's the best way to put it.
Mm-hmm.
You have the moment, and then another moment, and then another moment. In other words, when the mind is looking at the moment, it has a tendency to put a frame around it, which is fascinating, really. But that's what we do. We think of something within a frame or boundaries. I do my, whatever the task may be, my cooking a certain way. I've got to have this, I've got to have that. I do my vacation a certain way. I do my work a certain way. I'm sitting in the office doing it. There's a system or a way of doing it. Or if you're a student, you're doing your homework a certain way. But that moment, it's not just doing it a certain way, because that, if you think about it, translates into believing that that's my style of doing it. And that's who I am. Mm-hmm. How many times have we heard those two phrases together? Well, that's just me. That's who I am. Mm. And you sit there and you realize that you're defining yourself by what you're doing or what you think you should be doing and how you're doing it, as opposed to being aware that this is an expression into the world. Your soul is trying to express into the world, but your awareness is observing that. And frankly, looking at that and saying, well, that kind of worked, but there's something missing there. Or, gee, that's it completely. That made a moment of now so alive that it's embedded in my memory. I can recall it completely. What was said, how it felt, just even the temperature of the room or the smells in the room, just alive in that moment. So this is where the confusion rears up, believing that somehow mentally you think you can figure it all out without actually experiencing the moment. Oh, that's who I am. That's just what I do.
Well, and to tie into that, when you do that, you put a box around it, you put a frame around it, you put a frame around a task or a series of actions. You identify with it. That's my way, my style, my method of doing things. It's good or bad based on my judgment, or whether I got everything I wanted to get done. And so it's instantly assailable by any random event that happens in the universe. The moment is all about control, and the moment is all about the box and the frame, and how my style and how my identity is wrapped up in how it's all happening. And as you mentioned a moment ago, that I've mentally gamed the whole thing out. I'm going to go to work. I'm going to get these tasks done. And then you get there, and there's a power failure, or your boss tells you to do something else, or some things, some crazy thing goes wrong, or just 5 other things get piled on your desk that you weren't expecting, right? And what rises up? Well, that's not the way my day was supposed to go. You're always telling me what to do, and I don't want to do it that way, and this one is out to get me, and all of a sudden it becomes a huge production. The frame, the beautiful little, neat little box that you tied a bow on as you planned it all out, is completely It has no relationship to the actual reality, nor the actual moment of now, right? So what's going to happen in your mind is a fantasy. And what actually happens, especially if you've tied your ego and your identity up in the fantasy of what's going to happen today, and then it doesn't happen, turns into conflict. It turns into suffering. It turns into why does this one always make me, and start the stories, right? So the whole idea of packaging things, framing things, gets you away from what Tolle's talking about, which is that you're no longer on the step that you're taking at this moment. You're planning, the whole thing out. That's not going to work, but you don't know that, and your ego's all tied up in it. And, you're realizing that none of that package works, so suddenly it's all like the whole world is out to get me, and they're trying to push me around, and this one wants this, and that one wants that, and I can never get what I want to get done. It's this one's fault. It's that one's fault. It turns into, a crap show. And people live their lives in that sort of maelstrom of expectations and plans and packages and frames. None of it works.
Well, if you take that moment and ask, why am I doing that?
Mm.
Why in general do we do that? You do create a frame. Okay, this is part of the way we function. But it's taken a step much further than just the frame or the boundaries of the task that is, or the place that is, or the event. Okay, it suddenly becomes more than that. And personally looking at that, I believe it comes from believing that these frameworks are your identity.
Mm-hmm.
But even more than that, the foundation of it is believing that your identity can be earned. In other words, you can create your identity and earn respect, prominence,
mm-hmm.
power, by this idea of earning identity. And identity is not earned. That thought alone usually blows your mind. It's like, wait a minute. I thought identity was earned. I thought I had to show people who I am. But when you do it that way, your motivation is fear. You're defining your identity through fear, what you're afraid of. You're afraid of people criticizing you.
Mm.
You're afraid of the fact that you might be taken advantage of. You're afraid of perhaps this will cause me pain.
Or failure.
Yes. Or perhaps I will fail. An identity cannot save you from those fears. And that's another interesting thought. Do people actually believe that an identity can save them from their fears?
I would say that the ego tries very hard to convince you of that.
Well, but that's my point. When you realize that the ego, this is just not possible, and your motivation is to try to keep fear away, but it's not by identifying with certain appearances. If I appear slimmer, people will respect me more. If I appear taller, if I appear stronger in some way, and it's interesting because we don't necessarily bring those thoughts up what actually is motivating your decision. It's very difficult to be able to take a couple steps back and separate yourself from the action and realize, what is the motivation here? Why am I doing that? Why? Because it's become automatic or accepted. It's like a certain group. This is the way we always do it.
Well, okay, we are kind of wandering around in this a bit, but the point is, though, that all of those things are egoic constructs, and what Tolle would advise us to do is to examine them, just as you're talking about. In essence, the practice he's advocating here is to continuously realize that the only moment you have is right now, and the only control you have is the realization that you can realize, you can accept, and then you can decide what you want to do about it, if anything. But that's all you have. How you feel about it, that's all you have.
Well, okay. I'll backtrack a little bit then. It has nothing really to do with how you feel about something. If you're aware, then you can pinpoint the feeling, what the feeling is, and how it affects you. But for the most part, that's all unconscious.
Yes, if you're not aware, the unconscious behavior is what you were just describing before, and that's absolutely where people get totally tied up in appearances. They mentioned that they're trying to appear more wealthy or slimmer or whatever it might be. That it's often driven by fear, and the antidote for that, the ego will tell you the antidote for that is, well, you have to get more powerful or more money or more better prepared or more educated or have more control. That's the big one, right? Everything has to be completely under your control. That you have to understand everything about the situation. That every piece of it has to be within your purview and within your influence. And the more it doesn't work, it's like the old saying where you say, well, what's the definition of insanity? The more it doesn't work, the more the ego says, well, no, we just have to do it right, or we have to do it better, or we have to, even though they don't like us, we'll make them. You've got to like me. I'm going to make you like me. So this becomes an insatiable, unconscious treadmill, and you find yourself, or people who are trapped in this find themselves unfulfilled, completely lost, frustrated, fearful. None of the things that the ego has promised come true.
If you hold yourself to your own standard, you realize that.
Well, I think you can. Yes, that's true. You know, the only way that you even start this is to realize that it's not working. And that's almost like the interesting thing about that, Margaret, is it reminds me of like a 12-step program. The very first thing you have to do, if you're an egoaholic, an ego-aholic, not an alcoholic, an ego-aholic, you have to say, as an alcoholic does, you have to realize you have a problem. You have to say, this is not working. The very first step of an unconscious, ego-addicted or sated with ego, a persona.
An egoholic?
An egoholic, which I think is a great word, and I might have to coin it or something. But if you're an egoholic, you have to first realize that you can't get out of it on your own. Well, what do you mean by on your own? You can't. You have to examine. You have to stop the ego or the alcohol or whatever the addiction is. The egoaholic is addicted to ego. To stop the treadmill. Stop going back to the ego for solutions. Like you're going back to the bottle for solutions to your problems. Going back to the ego for solutions for your problems. It doesn't work. And so when you reach rock bottom in the egoaholic pathway, is when you realize that the ego is doing nothing but bringing you suffering. And it's interesting that Tolle is talking about steps, because it is like a 12-step journey. The most important part of the journey is the step you're on right now. Right. But the ego wants to say anything but that. It's, this step is unimportant. This step, we don't even care about this step. We're trying to get to step 457. Don't you understand? Mm-hmm. This one doesn't matter. We're not even paying attention to this one.
But it's interesting because that is showing the addictive nature that humans have. We're addicted to something.
Yeah, isn't that true?
And so an egoholic is addicted to his or her own ego.
Yeah. That's a very seductive drug.
Oh, my gosh. You think?
Because you're fed it by everyone around you.
Everybody feeds everybody else's ego.
Ego. Well, this is something we should explore for a few minutes, because it has some real hooks to it. Because, you, like a drug pusher or like somebody who introduces you to alcohol or whatever, you're kind of fed this early on, mm-hmm. and it feels good, and it makes you gives you a little boost, an ego boost, and people say, oh, you're doing so well, your ego's growing and growing, it's going great. And here's some more ego juice, So there are pushers in the egoic addiction world. They're kind of handing you hits of mm-hmm. ego. Mm-hmm. What is the whole social media and online mm-hmm. experience and all that is all ego hits, right?
Mainline.
You're getting stroked and hit with a fed with another hit of, oh, you're so good in this one. You have 5,000 followers. Now you have 10,000 followers. Now you're this. You're an influencer. You got a gold star. You got whatever the YouTubes give you. And all of that is to say, but you're not there yet. No, but here's some more ego. Here's some more drug. Here's some more hit. But keep running. And, it doesn't feel good. Here's some more hit. Oh, this is not working out. Here's some more hit. That's an interesting way of looking at it, because an egoaholic, and like an alcoholic or a drug addict, is suffering. They're in constant horrible pain, in essence, and that the drug is the only thing, or the alcohol is the only thing, or the ego hits are the only thing that are given to them to kind of relieve it. But it's no more. It's no more than a temporary relief and an actual cause to the problem. It doesn't help. It only hurts. And yet you can't see it because the unconscious just drinks it in. Just is soaking in ego.
Right. Well, and this is how you believe you've interacted with your life all the way through.
Right. It's who I am, man.
It's who I am.
Just built different.
That's when you have to take that step back and expand your awareness. Realize that you have to sit there and realize that your ego is not everything.
Well,
contrary to popular belief.
May I ask you a question, though?
Sure.
Do people, okay, this might not be always true, but do the majority of people have to hit bottom, come to the end of their ego, and realize it's not working for them before they can take the step you just mentioned?
Absolutely.
Well, isn't that terrible?
Well, you have to have pain. This is why this life is suffering.
But I want to back up. The terrible part, yes, the pain may be the way you get out, but the terrible part is that people hand you this drug as part of their ego. They say, well, we got to hand this drug to the a child is born into this world literally egoless. They're observing almost as purely as they can. And when you find that child, you feel the tug away from ego because they're so egoless at that moment. And yet the impulse is to hand them ego. Oh, you're doing this so well, but if only you could, just try a little harder. And the whole idea of inculcating the drug of ego with the best intentions, because you don't know anything else.
Okay. Ego in a balanced form is fine.
but unconsciously, right? They're doing it. They don't know about balance when they're doing it.
Well, this is the thing. To have a balanced ego and not be excessively egoic. Now, there's a distinction. But there are many of us that are here that have got to go through this whole egoic journey in order to come out the other side and realize you have perspective on what your ego has done to you, yourself. And that's the only way you can gain experience. You've come to this world for experience. It's as simple as that. And you're not even aware of the fact that you can overdose on ego instead of having a balanced dosage of ego. It's truly fascinating because you have to look at it in terms of how am I ODing on my ego.
Right. But to get there, okay, so the analogy, maybe not perfect analogy, of alcoholic or a drug addict or addicted to gambling or whatever, is that you get this pleasure hit. So let's put the ego to the side. But you get, because those all things are egoic in and of themselves, you get this pleasure hit, sometimes a physical dependency like alcohol or drugs, but sometimes it's an endorphin hit that is, in essence from the the winning or even the likes on social media, which I think are similar in many ways to a gambling addiction. So you get this hit, this ego hit, and it draws you in. But eventually the drug addict or the alcoholic, maybe earlier, and perhaps the person who's getting the hits from gambling or other things, you hit a point of suffering, a point of pain, whatever it might be, psychological or actual physical pain, where you're forced to realize that the ego or the drug or the hit is the actual cause of this pain. That it offers no solution. That you finally see through the veils, and then you have to find a new way. And whether it's a 12-step program, which is it can be an egoic way out of alcohol addiction, but truly you get yourself down to all this stuff that the ego has handed me brings me to the rock bottom place where actual things happen, actual suffering comes in, all the conceits and all the veils are kind of stripped away, or I realize I come to the end of myself, sometimes the end of my life, unfortunately, but sometimes the end of myself. And what do you find there? But as you mentioned way earlier in the conversation, the thing that was really being hidden, that this isn't your identity, that none of it was, that the true you didn't have to earn or deserve or get from other people. It was always there.
Well, you must be able to experience first so that you have a perspective. That's the interesting thing about humanity, humans in general. We need a reference point in order to begin to understand certain things. It's just the way we've been built. And it's very difficult to talk to someone who has never really hit bottom, understand how horrible it actually is. They'll just say, oh yeah, I've had pain too. Mm-hmm. Yes, you've had pain, but to have everything taken away from you, where, first of all, you have absolutely no control, and everything around you is showing you that, and what's happening at this moment is not something you want to happen. And it feels like there's nothing else you can do to get out of it. And it may have torn apart your your heart, emotional devastation, or your physical body, just as any kind of physical addiction will do, drag you down until you don't feel like you're human anymore. Or mentally, you've lost it completely. They're just someone who used to be there suddenly is just not there. They talk about devastation, especially for your family, but for yourself, you've lost all this mental aspect. And if you've invested your ego into believing that you are what you think, and that mental capacity is going, it feels like you're dying in that moment. Because suddenly your ego is disintegrating because you can't even hang on to a thought. It's coming back to who you truly are, your awareness in this moment of now. That is truly important.
Well, and to go back again to Tole. So let's come back. Let's come forward from where we were. So the egoic addiction brings you to rock bottom, and then you're forced. You're put in a position where you're forced to realize that this does not work, and it feels existentially as though you're being destroyed because the ego itself is in essence the bloated, ego-addicted personas and all the pain bodies, as Tole calls them, and there are other anecdotes about or appellations about them. All those things start to fall away. They start to die, or their influence, their outsized influence on veiling you the person, the actual being, starts to fall away, and you're left with a much clearer, but yet not all the way, let's say, enlightened or free version of yourself. What is stripped away is illusion. Certainly, it's the illusion of all these things, all the control of all these things the ego was saying we're going to work and going to power and all this. Especially in, let's say, a situation where you lose everything, or a situation where you're handed a life-threatening illness, or the idea here's your diagnosis, you have 3 weeks to live, or whatever the heck it is. People get these all the time, and it brings a burning point of clarity. If you survive the initial stripping away, the maelstrom shock, and everything that comes upon you, and you don't do something where you throw your existence away, like people do, the egoic drives people to suicide, unfortunately. But you get past that, and then you say that this existential moment becomes, well, who am I really? Who is the being here? Who is left? What is left? And you're there at this point, at the most important part of your journey. You have to realize that right now is all you have, and right now is all you ever had. And that breakthrough, through the experience we had with Christopher, we all reached that. And not everyone that was influenced, it was in that influence, in that maelstrom, reached that. But in the bitter point that we were at, that Christopher was at, and you were at, and I was at, we had to reach that because there was nothing left, and it became clear eventually for me, and perhaps quicker for you and for Chris, and that none of what we had built up around us, all the illusions, were real. And so you see through the illusions. You're Plato's cave, right? You got out. You get out. You realize that you were in a cave. You were watching shadows on the wall. There was a candle behind you. All that stuff. The analogy that you realize that all that didn't matter. So what's left? You're left. You in the moment of now are left. And the incredible, powerful, unique ownership of it, the specialness of it, the realization that no matter what, nothing can take the moment of now away from you. Nothing. No power in the universe can remove your ownership of your moment of now, because it is all that there is, and you uniquely and specially have it. And the realization that it is yours, and that whatever is happening in the moment of now, it is yours to experience. As you said earlier, you're here to experience things, and the ego is almost trying to put you in a giant cushiony frame covered in pillows and cotton and veils to almost hide experience, almost, like alcohol does. It dulls experience. Egoic things are like you're almost driven into this unconscious stupor by ego, like you are with alcohol or drugs. You can't feel anything. But then when it's all stripped away, there's withdrawal. But then there's realization. Go ahead, sorry.
The seduction of the ego to the awareness of, that's painful, that's horrible. Let me take that pain away.
Yep.
And that's when all the cushions start, and all the veiling and all the cotton wool just wrapped around you, so that you can't feel anymore. When you realize that what the ego is actually doing, even though it may seem like a good intention, but it is isolating you, insulating you from the burning point of life. I don't mean that you have to get thrown into it immediately, but just realize that the burning point, when you're living life so intensely, it can be a scary thing for a lot of people. And they back away, like, no, that's too much. Like, maybe for this particular moment, but there will be another moment and another moment. And how you decide to handle those moments will dictate your internal being, whether you are content and peaceful, or are you always striving for something else? That's the question that rises up. There's got to be something else. Wait, maybe I'm not doing it right. Or when questions like that rise up, you have to realize it's ego-driven. It's not you. There's this part that keeps saying all these things, and you're listening. And that's the question. It's like, who's listening? And do you realize you don't have to listen?
Well, to those voices, yeah.
To what is being said to you. It's very ingrained in us, especially when we're young, to want to listen to everything, because we don't know anything, and we know that. So you listen, and you're listening, especially to people around you, believing that they're going to guide you through this mess. But it's only when you've been through the dryer drum a few times you realize that other people have no idea what they're doing anyway.
Oh, yeah.
But that's okay. Maybe that's the best way to put it. Because that's when the ego comes in saying, oh, somebody was supposed to teach me how to do that the right way. No one ever taught me. That doesn't mean anything, really. You can't teach someone who doesn't want to learn.
Yeah. Yes. I just want to unpack that a little bit, because what you're absolutely saying is that, again, that people hand you these things. They hand you the voices. You internalize them. They become, because you're so open to start with, it's quite easy to spin up an ego. In fact, The ego is there. You mentioned it earlier. The ego is not something that is not part of every human being or every being, period. But it very quickly can be fed and grow outsize and start to try to define itself by covering the being with this sort of stupor, this sort of insulation. It was a great word they used earlier, that the ego insulates you or attempts desperately to insulate you from the moment of now. Here's a very good test. A very good test of ego is in your daily routine, the voices that are telling you, are they ever talking about the moment of now? They're talking about, no, a meeting that you have to go to in an hour, or something that happened last week, or the thing that you're going to do in a month, or the task that you've got to get done, but you can't get done because this one won't let you do it, and this one won't let you do it, and this story and that story. None of them. Ego does not want to deal with the moment now. In fact, it actively ignores it or deprecates it or runs away from it. The moment of now is anything that we don't want to do is in the moment of now. And everything that we do want to do, or that we thought we wanted to do, or that we were planning to do last week, or that we're going to do next month, in the past or the future, every part of the ego is insulating you from the moment of now, because the ego can't exist in the moment of now. And so it tries actively to ignore it. It tries actively to shield itself from it. Because once you do what Tolle is mentioning here, you break the egoic addiction, and some very rare occurrences, Tolle is an example of it himself, where it can just happen in an instant, that you suddenly realize that the moment of now is egoless. And that if you find the bliss in that moment, and you catch on to it, you say, well, if I just do this, all my cares drop away instantly. Well, that was kind of cool. Let me do it again. You become addicted to the moment of now in an odd way. You can't really say it that way because it doesn't allow that.
What?
It doesn't allow that. Ego is an addiction, but the moment of now, if you can find yourself catching on to awareness and catching on to the fact that the moment of now is exactly egoless, and the relief of the voices, because they can't exist there either. It's why the ego pushes the moment of now away all the time, is because that's a place where the ego is void. And it ignores it so actively that if you try to think of the moment of now, the ego will throw 14 things in front of you that you have to do tomorrow and next day, and this has to do, and that, and the plan, and all the stuff, and this won't happen, and because of you, and and the only way out, two ways out. The normal or the most common way out is suffering, where the ego falls silent because it doesn't know what to do. The moment of now is so present that it just drowns out the ego. But it's a painful moment. It's so distressing to egos that all the other egos around you leave. It happened to us. Every other egoic thing fled from the burning point of where we were and where others who were suffering along with us were. Egos fled. Yeah, and you saw them gibbering and running away, and you said, wow, what happened here? Well, because the ego couldn't stand it.
No, it's true.
Right?
No, it's true.
But sometimes it happens in a much more quiet, and you could say, well, that's better. It's not really better. It just happens. You can break through with pure awareness of the moment of now, because you realize that it's egoless and that it's so pain-free no matter what's happening. Once you get through this is very important. It's very difficult for the ego to break through, but once you break through the ego and you realize that no matter what is happening, that it's pain-free, because the suffering is from thinking about the future and the past and every other thing that could happen and all the other stuff that it's out of our control and everybody's out to get us. That's where the suffering comes from. The moment of now has no pain. It just is. And it has no definition for your being. It just is where you are. And then the thing you realize is what Tolle just said. It's also the most important and precious moment of ever, because it's now and it's gone in that same breath. And once you realize that, there's no pain because you're not happy. You're joyful. You're not seeking something. You're content. You're in the moment of now and present, joyful and content. And everyone around you, the egos around you, run away screaming or look at you and say, how can you be joyful and content? How can you be... Don't you realize? And you're like, yeah, but you don't understand where I am, where my being is. I'm in the indestructible, immutable moment of now. And the egos run. They run from pain, too.
Well, okay. That what they're running from is that burning point that life is. And if you think of it as light, okay, light is blazing forth in that moment. And when there is light present, it makes people aware of the darkness that they're holding on to, or the shadows that they're casting. Because when you have light, or just a simple experiment, it's sunshiny outside, and you light a match. If you look down at the shadow of your hand, and you basically, there's something in the back of your head that's saying, okay, I should have a shadow point on the end of this match, in a flame shape. Well, you look down there, and it doesn't exist, because light does not cast shadow, and all you have is the shadow of the matchstick, not the burning point. So when you yourself are abiding in that burning point, you wind up pointing out shadows for other people, for themselves. And it's astonishing, because they start running, because there's a part of them that says, no, I'm shadow. I'm not light. That can't be. I should be light. No. I'm good. I'm a good person. I should have light around me all the time.
But those are all the ego, right?
But this is my point. This is this thinking process is the matchstick.
That's good. I like that.
And you realize that has to burn away for you to become pure light. You can't ignite the matchstick without beginning the burning process. It doesn't happen. I have had so many people ask me for shortcuts. I want the shortcut. It's like you gotta burn that away to come to it.
May I expand on your analogy a little bit?
Sure.
Well, I love that, because you said the matchstick is the thing that has got to be burned away. But you know what the ego is doing? The veils we mentioned, all the thing. It's just piling up matchsticks. It's literally.
It keeps adding more.
In other words, we don't have enough light. Let's throw in more matchsticks.
Some people have giant logs.
Giant. Vast sums, huge piles of fuel, of matchsticks.
Oh my gosh! Yeah.
Every thought, every desire, every emotion. It's just another matchstick. And it's like trying to start a fire where all you have is fuel. You don't have any oxygen. You don't have any heat. You don't have any light. All you have is wood or matchsticks. And the ego says, "Oh, we want to have a fire here. Let's throw on more matchsticks." You're covering that which is the flame. All of our beings are emanations of source, emanations of light, and emanations of the creative force, emanations of I am who am,
the
spark, and also the light which existed before all things. So here we are, emanations of source in the corporeal world, in creation. Ego just keeps throwing all the, our ego is thoughts, it's emotions, it's desires, it's all the things that, and it's fine. There's nothing wrong with an ego, but what's wrong with an ego is when it tries to do nothing but create stacks and piles of all the things that shouldn't be used. That have to. We're not going to bother with understanding anything about the moment of now. We're going to try to do everything in the future, everything in the past, everything that isn't the moment of now, anything but the moment of now. Because at the burning point, the point that cannot actually be smothered in any way, shape, or form, that which is you, the emanation from Source,
the eternal,
the connection to the eternal, is always on fire.
Yes.
There's always a flame there. We mention this throughout all religions and almost every culture. There's the idea of the eternal flame. That's you. That's me. That's all of us. It cannot be extinguished. You can build up piles and piles and piles of matches to kind of hide it, but it's there. And if the matches fall away, what's left is the burning point. And sometimes that's what happens. They're all blasted away by circumstance. But if you yourself, the being, clears that away, the burning point is there. Sorry, you had something to put on there.
Well, okay, the analogy is getting a little muddled at that point. This point.
Clean it up.
I'm just saying, what I was saying was engaging continually in the issues that you may have over control or failure or judging that it should be a certain way. All of that is the substance of the matchstick. And the only way, well, not the only way, but you're down here to experience the burning point. So therefore, you need to have that fuel in order to have the burning point. This is because a lot of religions, basically, they went into this asceticism where they're like, no, nothing of the body. I'm not going to be indulging in any of that. Push it away. They went into meditative states constantly. They didn't live at all. It was one of these where, we're separated out and we're a monk or a nun somewhere in the forest. I mean, that's part of many traditions, to be separated and then okay.
Mm-hmm.
But it's understanding that concept of enlightenment, because they believed they were going to go into enlightenment. What they did is they gathered up all this material, and they believe that if they go into the woods and just meditate on it, they'll figure a way to ignite all of that. But a lot of them, what they did is they took the matchstick and threw it away, instead of sitting there and saying, now wait a minute, the burning point, this moment which is, need enter it without all that other stuff. In other words, that experience that was brought together into this, say, matchstick. Your spirit must come right in that moment, right now. And the ignition has to do with understanding that you're focusing on the flame and not the fuel. Because think of it this way, in order to have fire, you need three things. You need fuel, you need spark, and you need oxygen. And the oxygen is your ability to breathe your way through it. So allowing yourself the consciousness, allowing yourself the breath in the moment, allowing yourself to say, oh, my my life, this moment is falling apart, burning away, and all I have left is ashes. Breathing through it allows you to know that breath is so very important. We say spirit, and the spark is consciousness, and the body is the fuel.
I kind of like that. Because you see, what I was saying is that we are the spark, we are the emanation. But I like that analogy a lot because when you're incarnate, we are not just the spark anymore. There is the body, there is the soul, there is the spirit, and the soul is the thoughts and the emotions. The body is a corporeal thing. So I like that analogy a lot. But when you allow just the egoic things, all the soul things, all the thoughts, all the emotions, all that stuff to pile up, almost unburned, what you have is not a mess. Well, not just a mess, but it's a veil. It's completely clouded. It's completely you've hidden your light in essence, and you're not burning anymore.
No, you're only concentrating on one of those elements, and realizing that to live means that you must take the step in allowing yourself to burn away what you don't need anymore.
That's that continuously realizing and practicing, because that's once you realize the moment of now is all there ever is, you have to allow it to burn.
Right. You have to let go of the things that needed to burn. And it may be painful. It's letting go of certain things in terms of resentment. You may be justified in feeling the way you have been, but forgiveness is the way to let that go and let it burn. It hurts, okay? Forgiveness can hurt, but you'll be free. You won't be carrying around the weight of the fuel anymore.
Right, the ego. Well, in this particular moment of now, we have to burn our way out of here.
We've reached the end of our hour, and I'm Margaret.
And I'm Michael.
And thank you for being with us.
For burning with us.